Good afternoon. Uh, I know the first line session has always been difficult. Uh, Today, the session is going to be intelligence data platforms in the era of machine learning and generative AI. We are hearing a lot of noise in AI, and everybody is talking about it, and a lot of pressure within the enterprise systems and enterprises in terms of what to do with this noise. How do we address that noise with the existing data platforms? So I'm going to talk a little bit about evolutions of a data platform, and if you see, AI noise is everywhere, and it is being increasingly um, in multifold these days with agentic architecture. Now, we have had an opportunity to build data warehouses, data lakes, data lake houses, and the rack systems over a period of time. All of them, some form of, um, the batch in nature. The moment you get to the generative AI, you need to look at data differently, the platforms differently, and the way you process them differently. That is where real time is going to be a lot more important, and hence, how do we reinvent data insights and actions in the era of agentic architecture? Um, let me talk about little bit is that everybody is talking about a data driven organization. Now, in the context of machine learning and AI is also a data driven, we have seen a lot of challenges. Everybody says that it takes a lot of time in processing the pipelines, processing the data, right? Everybody complains about reliability of the data, quality of the data. Everybody talks about, hey, I don't have any governance today. With all of these challenges, in the last 30 years, we build a lot of data platforms. A lot of advancement happened using a machine learning, deep learning, and neural networks. Yet, uh, the moment we see generative AI, the moment we see agentic architecture, our platforms, which has been built over the years, is tumbling. And it is a time for us to relook at what is the best way to really need to see that. The diagram which I put in here is some kind of a thought process to see what is really needed. Do we read engineering frameworks? Engineering frameworks were always there over the years, and we are all build automated pipelines and using a metadata driven approaches, but that is not sufficient in the era of agentic AI. You really need to think about it differently. We always been talking about a data lakes. How about open way of looking into building some of these data lakes, right? And similarly, right, everybody is talking about algorithms, Gen AI, and frameworks. The reason I call it as the intelligent data platforms is that can we bring in a lot of intelligence to all of this, whatever we are doing, when we're building a pipeline, when we are processing it, when building the AI frameworks, when we are looking into the AI assistants and agent architectures, it is important to see that what is that we could do to be able to build an intelligent data platform, right? So, and I call it as a dark data in the age of agents. Uh, let me say that why I'm calling it as a dark data. Enterprises have over years ingested a lot of data. We still have a lot of data. Every time when we look at it, we always look at a small machine learning model, which is a logistic regression model or forecasting model. I always look for a portion of the data, and then that is it. And I still have a tons of data lying down in my data lakes and data warehouses. Nobody is really touching it. Now, when we come to the agentic systems, I mean, you build a assistant and you ask for a conversation, and the conversation can be any SQL which goes back and then look into your data lake. That could be any data which you never touched it, which you never looked at it. Is like the dark side of the world for your enterprise insights, right? So in the year of agents, um, the data warehouse, data lakes and lake houses. So far, so good. It's all batch, one way or other. Of course, we have done a little bit of a real time in that. But when it comes to the agentic systems, you really need the data to be absolutely real time. If your agents are taking a specific action, that data needs to be fresh, that data needs to be clean, that data needs to be accurate to be able to give the right results in the agentic architecture. Hence, it is an important to see how do we repivot the current way of doing the data platforms to a lot more intelligent the data platforms, right? Um, how do I define the data infrastructure for new era of AI? I mean, we have been talking about many technologies, but having said that, I kind of, put in some options here to see, not that, we need to define a specific architecture, but we really need to see that how do we process the data in real time? How do we have an open architecture? How do we create frameworks? And what technologies are available is something that, which everyone needs to really need to look at it, right? For example, iceberg. Transforming the way we are looking at it. Do we really need any other a platform for you to query it, for you to look into it? It is very difficult to say today, but tomorrow the way it is happening, the iceberg, the kind of new features which is coming into the iceberg, you may not really require platforms like Snowflake, platforms like Databricks. Maybe you could use a compute and do many other things on open format tables and could able to achieve it, right? So that you are reducing the a lot of layers in between when you are processing that. That's an idea of building a new way of looking into the data platforms, which is scalable, which is automated, which is intelligent. When I say intelligent, think about it. You connect to a source and you have a table. However, that table is all the way processing to your golden layer without anyone really looking into that, right? You don't even need to go to the metadata table and try to insert an entries. You don't need to, also need not need to look into that. That's the intelligent I'm talking about it, right? Now, the intelligent I'm talking about is that you really no need to deploy MLOps by creating the flows and then, the entire orchestration of it. Can it be created a framework so that you could run a model and automatically deploy on that? That's an intelligent way of looking at it. See, the idea is that do I need a 6 months? Do I need a 1 year to really implement a specific project for AI purposes? Versus can it be done pretty quick in a few weeks' time? Is the concept of intelligent data platforms? That's a thinking, something that which we all need to look into that, right? And that's an idea of looking. Look at this, for example, you have a Flink, you have a Kafka, you have an Iceberg, and you have a Finnote. You could create a great real-time a platform which is scalable, which you could do data science and AI parallelly, along with the agentic architecture, is a fantastic way of looking at it, instead of having multiple layers of data products within your enterprise, right? Um, Let me move on to the next slide, which is essentially um, how do you accelerate machine learning with the help of intelligent data platforms, right? We talk about a future engineering, we talk about the model deployments, but all of this really need your centralized data platform, which is real time in nature and which can be looked at it, right? If you really see, uh, a lot of action happens in and around building the MLOps ecosystem and AI platforms, but in the middle, which is your open data lake. What we call it as an open data lake is that once you have the data, you don't really need to create your own portion of the data marts or data stores every step of the life cycle of a AI product development or MLOps. That's what the fundamentally I'm looking to transform for all of us to think about it. What's a better way to build a MLOps platform on a new infrastructure which is a real time and which can solve many challenges in the industry, right? Now, similarly, look at rise of a generative AI. I mean, many things which needs to be done. If you see generative AI, a lot of development happens using agentic systems. A lot of development happens in supervision of those applications. You build a lot of intelligent applications. A lot of monitoring happens. But at the end, actually, you have to have um, a, a platform which is intelligent enough, which is a real time, which you could process quickly, and it can be scalable, which can be integrated with all kind of a scenarios. Today, everybody is talking about multiple protocols for the AI, which is important that in your platform should be able to connect and then to be able to deliver it, right? Now, you see AWS, Azure, GCP, everybody is having a lot of technologies. The point is that how do we build a platform which is nimble, simple, which is a real time for the AI use cases to be implemented. So that's the idea of seeing that how the AI is transforming the intelligent data platforms. With that, I wanted to talk about a couple of uh, use cases, rather the implementations, what we have been seeing it. Um, Customers are really thinking about it. Why this AI noise is so big, and it is a lot of pressure. Everybody thinks that by an enterprise having a 20,000 reports, 30,000 reports, can I build an AI assistant? I can eliminate the entire reporting layer, right? How do I do that? Of course, you could do it, provided if you have the right representation of your data platform, which can be processed, which can be looked at it. And in the industry, at the same time, if you see, over the years, terabytes of data lakes have existed, very large scale in every enterprise. All the machine learning, deep learning, neural network models have built on top of those data platforms. Now, when generative AI comes in, or AI assistants comes in, people are not using those platforms. You are having a separate thread of your own data stores, and then you are building a separate thread in achieving those real-time aspects of it. The question is, can we make those platforms a lot more intelligent so that you could look at it? So here on the first use case, it is all about on AWS and then the Snowflake. I think the trick is that you build an engineering framework using a Kafka and a Flink, and the idea is that it's a touchless. When I say touchless, you you just need to configure the what tables you wanted to process and which layers you wanted to orchestrate. That is it. After that, the entire data engineering process will kick in, and you should be able to process the data using the the open source, the Flink and Kafka, and finally land in the Iceberg. And Iceberg is playing a very important role today. The moment the data is there in the Iceberg, you could process onto the Snowflake, or you could take it into the ML use cases without further taking the data into the next streams, right? That's an idea of creating a real-time way and using a open format tables, and then finally building the frameworks. If you see AWS also having the bedrock like any other chat GPT kind of scenarios, but at the same time they are also building intelligent assistants. I think they build a queue business which is very useful for everybody to look at it. But at the same time, you can talk about it in terms of how do I build a custom apps, bring in a lot more intelligence into that is a very important thing to look at it in that particular use case. Very, very advanced way of building it, but in this, we only build a frameworks and engineering processes, but there is not any manual work. It's not like 50, 60 people coming and building the pipelines. It is more a lot more intelligent to look at it. The second use case is very interesting. Um, think about it. If you were to process 20,000 orders per second, 500 million orders in a day. Yet, you wanted to track what is happening in the every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. You have to have an alerting mechanism. Yeah, that is where the Pinot, Apache Pinot, which is a real-time use case, as in when you just bring the data here and you don't need to create any aggregations, right? And that's a one way of building the real-time use cases of implementing the low latency kind of a use cases. But at the same time, you also can push the data into the open formats so that your enterprise can start building the other AI and ML use cases, which is also an important for the enterprise to look at it, right? So uh, a lot of use cases are pretty real time, and anyone who is using agentic architecture, you have to have a real time data. You have to have a real time information to be able to successful. Otherwise, there is no between a RAG way of doing versus agentic way of doing it. Today, RAG is a batch. And the way we have done our data lakes, the way we have done our data warehouses, the way we have done all our machine learning models are all batch today. The only way to get to the agentic is with the help of a real time. That real time requires a different thinking, different way of processing it. Earlier, we used to talk about, whenever we wanted to do a real time, always questions being asked is, hey, do we really need a real time? And based on that, you will take a lot of decisions, because real time is expensive, real time is difficult to do it, and you need a lot of infrastructure to do it. Today, it is not about do you really need a real time. Real time is the way to go for the generative AI kind of a use cases, and especially agentic way of doing specific use cases. Your platform needs to support it, and a lot of technology exists, and it is a mainstream today, and building intelligent data platform using some of these technologies will be very interesting to look at it. I thought I will share these two use cases about intelligent data platforms. So with that, I just wanted to the conclude and take a few questions you might have. Um, you need to talk a common language of your data. When I say common language, I have a S3 data lake, I have a Redshift, I have a Pinot, I have a few other systems. That's not a common language of your enterprise data. You should have a common language, which means that data is available, which you could able to look at it, and we should be able to see that how do you able to process it. Real-time engineering and AI frameworks, um, think about it, everything can be processed in real time, and you don't need to wait till the end of the day. Let the data comes in. If you really want AI use case to be up and running, you can transform it. There are a lot of many use cases which you could be looking at it. Of course, over the years we spoke about a lot of replication tools. We spoke about Spark streaming. We spoke about Kafka. There are many other technologies exist today to be able to look into that, right? Of course, you could do a mini batches, which is the history now. Those use cases are no longer really, a lot of people are using it, but that is not what you wanted to do when the AI is advancing so much that your data platform also needs to advance, and then the technology needs to be advanced and thinking needs to be advanced on that. And then finally, I'll talk about using the AI-powered data quality, AI-powered frameworks, in the sense that use as much of AI possible in building your frameworks, building your DQ to be able to look at some of these the scenarios. The bottom line is this, right? You have to have an integrated governance which has the metadata, lineage, cost governance, as well as responsible AI principles to look at it. Now, I will talk about a few of the scenarios, right? You have a Databricks platform. Can I do everything within Databricks, including LLMs, including agentic way of doing it, including the report without going anything else? Of course, it is a possibility. Can I do a real-time streaming? Yes, it is a possible. It is all about how do we really need to architect your entire ecosystem so that you could able to see that how fungibility will be there, how tightly you could integrate in and around it, right? So a lot of customers are building the GenAI use cases on Databricks. Same thing is happening on the Snowflake, same thing is happening onto the other hyperscalers, but it is about how well you design your architecture so that it is real time, it can be processed pretty quick into that ecosystem, right? Um, um, that's a pretty much what I wanted to share, but I'll take any questions you might have, happy to answer.